Hi, welcome. My name is Dale McCluskey, and on this live stream, I want to kind of come on here just for a few minutes and talk about the remote collar as a tool. Again, there's a lot of controversy right now about not just the remote collar, but the training process itself in terms of approaching training as a as a force-free type of a process. And that leads into this whole issue about these device bans, why they're happening in the first place, and what is the role of, say, certain tools such as a remote collar. Do they even have a place in terms of a process? And this is where, again, getting into this thing about identifying, okay, the process itself. And I talk through this, again, talking through the issue here, issues, helping people understand what's happening right now in the dog training world. But identifying, again, in terms of a process, how do you reconcile certain things such as influence? Again, this plays into the remote collar as a tool. What place does it have? And this is where, again, once you understand the process itself, in terms, again, the system of training advocates the process based on specific interactions, based on dogs as social animals that a dog will come into agreement with, is motivated to come into agreement with. And so it's all about understanding the relationship side of things, and this is what's really important. It's critical to understand dogs at that level in terms of understanding behavior itself, reconciling behavior issues in terms of dogs gaining control. Control, again, just like I use often my selfish child example, because it's really very similar. If you really look at, again, being a parent and dealing with, say, a relationship problem with an already selfish child, you start to understand why it's so important to understand how to approach a problem in terms of a process to make sure you're advocating correctly so that things are going to line up. Okay, you're not just dealing with a superficial picture that you're assuming is a certain way and it really isn't, and based on how, again, this is very popular, this idea of training, very popular in the dog training world in terms of approaching training as a learning-based exercise and using treats. And this is where you see people using treats. They use certain things to generate a response, and it just doesn't line up. Okay, dogs are sure they're going to move around, but they're still holding control because of what the process represents, based on what's popular. And so it's really important to understand that when you're dealing with a behavior issue with a dog, okay, understand that you already have you're identifying you have a relationship problem, and so the dog's not perceiving you the right way. They're holding control. And so you want to make sure you're engaging the process correctly. In the system of training, again, it's all about doing that, okay, based on interacting with, and no different than a selfish child, interacting with, okay, depth, okay, investment, how you're investing in approaching that relationship problem. So it's very similar. It's very similar. So it makes sense. You sit down with people. I sit down with people all the time, talk them through it, help them reconcile, what they're doing, why they're doing it. And this leads into this whole issue about remote collars, okay? Again, where does remote collars, do they have a place? But this also leads into this whole confusion, in terms of why it is that people are questioning the role of these devices in terms of what they're doing. Because what they're doing is, and again, just think about this, balanced trainers, they pivot off these devices, and some pivot off these devices heavily, okay? It's like their go-to device to build a picture, to generate a response. But the problem is that, again, this is where you get these issues with when trainers have aligned themselves with this process that allows dogs to continue to hold control, and then they're using these devices, and I have one here just to show it. Okay, here's a remote collar, and here's what goes on the dog. Okay, on the dog, around the dog's neck area. Okay, that will generate influence. Okay, and this is the transmitter, receiver. Okay, for for using how these devices connect. And so again, it's understanding again when that the problem with these devices can be when trainers are both in alignment with this very problematic process. That's an open door for dogs to continue to hold control based on how they're, again, generating responses, building a picture, and assuming, okay, that things are lining up a certain way, and they're rewarding the dog, or they're assuming, okay, based on dogs going into position. Because understand, these trainers, they're all position oriented, they're all response oriented in a very superficial way. It doesn't line up, okay? So when they use, say, something like a remote collar to generate a response, and it can cause a problem, because what happens is, we'll talk through this a little bit, they're trying to find what's called the working level, okay? The level at which a dog is going to respond, okay, based on, generating influence, which this does, okay, called an aversive tool, but what it does is it generates influence by way of a shock, okay, or vibration. We'll talk through this a little bit, but finding, again, we talk about finding a working level. Understand the problem of finding a working level when a dog is holding a level of control, okay, and then you're coming into alignment with a process that doesn't line up properly to begin with, because you're doing it in a very superficial way. You're assuming that things are lining up a certain way based on dogs responding, right? And so you're not being proactive in what you're doing. You're not dialed in properly, and so the tendency is to wait until the dog is already expressing a high level of control, okay, it's manifesting, and then you're deciding at that point, you know what, I'm going to shock the dog, okay, I want to generate a response, but the dog's already expressing a high level of control, it's manifesting, and so your working level has to be high. You gotta turn up the juice, okay? And the problem with that is it'll bring a more of a higher level of conflict into the equation. Okay, the dog is going to be pushing hard to try to push through it, because you're in a reactive stance because of the process that you're in alignment with. So understand that it's all about how these dominoes fall, okay? So number one, if you're in agreement with a process that's superficial, okay, and you're looking at things a certain way, and then you try to, use a device to build the picture, okay, understand the problems that can generate, okay, and actually you can put stress on a dog, actually cause worse problems, and it generally will. But then this calls in the whole question, okay, when you use these devices and you're in agreement with a process that force-free trainers are in agreement with, okay, force-free trainers build the picture the same way, right? It's all about how can I get the dog to respond, so I can assume that through those series of responses that things are lining up the way I think they are. And then the force-free, movement saying, well, hold on here a second. Why are balanced dog trainers using a negative if they're in agreement with the same process that we are, based just at a position-based level? Why are they using a negative? What's the role of these devices? Let's ban them. Okay, let's put the heat on here. Let's get rid of them, and that's what's happening, right? Because they're not getting the process right. So here, right, it's understanding to this system, right? This system is based on interacting with dogs, right? Interaction based. So it reconciles the role of influence right at the very beginning, right? It's like the dog is going to come into agreement, because influence is happening through these interactions. That makes sense to the dog. The dog comes into agreement with influence, because that's what's happening at a relationship level. And so the good news is, all right, these devices do have a role as a secondary tool, okay? So this isn't the focus, right? And because the dog is receptive, okay, the dog is releasing control in a consistent way, makes more sense because it's the process, okay, it's the interactions, it's like stripping it down to bare bones. And so therefore, these tools are going to be more receptive, right? The dog is going to make sense of saying, hey, this is lining up, the person's changing, this makes sense to me. And so therefore, you can get away with vibration, okay, most of the time. I say most of the time. There can be situations where, say, you're dealing with very aggressive dogs that are expressing a high level of intent, okay, control within the crate, then you may use the shock setting, but even that's going to make more sense. That can even be down lower. It's like a hand slap, but it's very specific, and it's only temporary, but in certain cases that are extreme. And we can talk through that, but the problem is in the dog training community, the shock is used as the go-to. They're not used properly because these trainers are waiting until the dog is already controls manifesting at a high level. If you watch these trainers, again, I encourage you to pay attention, the difference between how I'm doing and what they're doing. If you watch, and there's several videos out there, these balance trainers are standing there, they're talking about this device. The device is on the dog, but they're not pushing buttons or anything yet. But if you pay attention to some of these videos of these balance trainers, and I encourage you to do it, you'll see the dog is there at their facility because the dog has already gained control. And if you pay attention, even off camera, you'll see these dogs' heads are turning, they're investing. The trainers are oblivious, they're not doing anything, because they're thinking about this device as, see, this is about the device. It's no different. And here's the thing about applying critical thinking about what I'm talking about in terms of the relationship side of things. It'd be the same as being a parent. As soon as your feet hit the floor in the morning, you're the parent. You know, you're not the parent until you get a problem and it's exploding, and then suddenly you're jumping in and saying, hey, and that's the problem, is that you have to understand going into a process when the dog is already holding the level of control, you have to be on it. Okay, on it means that just using and you see me using the leash, nudging, you know, you're in tune to what's happening in that moment. The trainers, you watch them standing there and they're talking, and these dogs are looking around, investing, and control is manifesting already. And it's not until they're tuned in, right? They decide. Then they're hitting the button, and this is the whole working level problem. And then, you know, then they're dialed in. That's the wrong way to be doing it. This is why there's so many questions, because they're superficially focused, right? They don't, in their interpretation, the problem has to hit a certain point before they dial in. Wrong way to think. Okay, these devices, as long as you get the process right and the process is lining up properly, they can be a great tool as a secondary tool, and it's because it's going to line up properly, it's going to make more sense to the dog's going to be more receptive, because you're approaching it in a proactive way. Okay, so how you're using these devices, it matters. And then, again, there's no questions about these devices, because people are going to be more receptive, because they're saying, you know what, it makes sense. How they're being used, they're not being used in a way that, because the process is making sense, you understand? So again, I just want to talk through a little bit about these remote collars, because there's so much controversy. They're being banned, you know, they're being banned because it starts with the process. Understand that if you don't, again, I talk about the optics of people define certain ways to describe influence, corrections, discipline, all these different things. But again, there's questions about it, because it's about the process. You have to start with the right process to understand what is the process in terms of once a dog has gained a level of control. Well, you have to engage just like you would as a parent. So again, I just want to put out there that I do use these devices, but in a very limited way. And it's for, say, dogs in the crate, and just help to settle the dog. Dog is holding a level of stress because they have gained a level of control. But it makes more sense. The dog's more receptive, because you'll see. I mean, when you see these devices being used, and this is the thing about when the dog has a level of control, I encourage to pay attention to how dogs respond to these devices when they're not used the right way. Okay, they're used in a very superficial way. You'll see these dogs trying to push through. They're like, okay, I'll take the pain. You know, I'll take whatever is coming, because that person's not changing. This ain't lining up. So I'm going to push through that device. I'll take the pain to gain fulfillment, to gain control. And you see that dog's like kicking, and that dog is just, and that trainer's trying to light that dog up, because what are they focused on? This device. They're focused on, you know what, I'm just going to keep pushing that button, and I'm going to get that dog's attention. And you can do that, and you can push through it, but that's not the way to do it. And then guess what it does? It calls them to question everything, because then, you know, the public and the force-free movement saying, hold on here a second, what are these people doing? They're lighting these dogs up. They're trying to find the working level, and see, it's just confusion, because here's how I relate when I'm talking through this stuff, and people really sometimes want to challenge me, and especially the dog training community, saying what's they talking about, and here's the problem, and I'll put this example out, because I've used this example before. When you become so focused on the device going into becoming a dog trainer, okay, it's all about the device, it's all about just the superficial way that people build a picture. It's all about just getting a dog to respond, and there's no depth. There's no depth. It's just like if you've ever gone into a store, and you know, you've gone up to the cash register, and the cashier, you'd be a very intelligent person, but they become so dependent on that cash register that when the power goes out, you're standing there, and they lost the ability to apply critical thinking to do basic math, and you're helping them along. You're saying, well, you owe me, you know, $1.12, but they're thrown off, because they've become so reliant on a device, okay, that they've lost the basic ability to apply critical thinking. So understand, when I'm talking through this stuff, even using examples about being a parent, and why the stuff doesn't line up based on how these trainers are superficially generating responses, and they're not looking at the relationship side of things. They're not putting things into, not connecting the dots properly. And they come back and say, it's psychobabble, it doesn't make sense. Well, it's only psychobabble because they've lost their ability to apply critical thinking, to understand, and they're all caught up in this stuff because it's easy, right? It seems easy. It's like drive-through mentality. Let's just use this device. And then people wonder why they can't get these devices off the dogs, right? The dogs, because the dogs are still holding control. It's not lining up, all right? And then, you know, the dog seems better when the device is on, the prong collar, the shock collar, because becomes a crutch. Because you're not faded in. The dog's saying, sure, I'll respond to this device, but that person hasn't changed. So it's about stripping everything away, investing in a method that's going to align properly, to fade in the right way. That's what I'm talking about. Dogs are social animals, and the dog releasing control, and then these devices take on different meaning. Okay, that makes sense. And then these devices fade away. Understand, this is just temporary. So when I get a device, I'm not spending $300 on a device that I'm only going to use a short term. I tell people, get them off of Amazon or whatever, spend 30 bucks, get something, don't get just some cheap thing, have something that has like 100 levels, and this device works fine for what's needed, and then it goes away because you're faded in. The stress comes off the dog, everything makes sense. So again, that's what I put out there about the misinformation, the confusion in the dog training community about these devices, because it starts with getting the process right. Once you get the process right, everything's going to line up. But if you don't get the process right, you can argue see people debate and they argue all day long because they started out not asking the right questions at the beginning as a trainer. Just look, these things don't line up for a reason. But again, understand the dog training community, it's a mess. I'll put it out there, it's a mess. Things are happening, everything's symptomatic. These devices are being stripped away, being taken away from people because they're not listening, all right? They're saying, you know what, I'm gonna do what I wanna do, the heck with it, I'll just push it right to the wall. And this is what's happening. This is why the force-free agenda is absolutely gaining momentum. And that's not good either, right? That's leading to problems, but things are gonna hit the wall. So understand, I'm talking through this stuff, help people understand, but if you're call yourself a balance trainer, pay attention to what I'm saying, because you know this is the reason why there's so much confusion. You need to understand the depth of what's happening. You have to understand dogs in terms of even getting behavior issues, you know, put in the proper context of behavior issues, represent control. But when people say, what's control? What's control? Think about a selfish child. The child becomes more and more selfish. Guess what happens? They begin to act out. Behavior issues increase. Just common sense. It's about relationship. It's understanding about interacting, why you want to take or approach it in a different way, in a way that's going to line up properly. And then again, these tools are going to line up as well. So again, it all starts with the process and it just goes through there. So again, just want to put up a quick Facebook post, a Facebook video about these devices. There's so much controversy right now. There's so many questions being asked, but again, I encourage people to think about what I'm saying. Apply critical thinking, you know, strip everything down. Get away from these devices that way. I mean, it's just this drive-through mentality. It's just so lazy and superficial. And this is why I give balance trainers a hard time as well, because I'm like, they're doing the same lazy, superficial thing, and they wonder why there's problems. You can't talk about this stuff. They don't want to talk about it because they can't talk about it because they're sold out. They're doing the same drive-through, superficial thing as everybody else. So I just got a thing here saying thanks for sharing. You're welcome. Here, anyone has questions as they do these Facebook, even might not be related to the thing I'm talking about, feel free to ask. I'm here to help people. Understand, I'm here to help people. I'm here to help dog owners. It's a tough thing to talk through this stuff. I understand people get very upset sometimes only because of what they've sold out to. Understand. And here's the thing, I want to put this out there. The problems are going to continue. People can say they don't like me talking through this stuff. They don't want me to talk this way. More so the dog training community. Dog owners should love it. They'd be like, well, Dale's putting out some great information here. Because here's the thing, I care about dogs. I care about dogs the right way. I care about people. It's about relationships. I want people to be successful. And I don't want people to get burned. I don't want people to think that they're, you know, things are going one way and then this isn't a line. That's so common and that's sad, because if you care about dogs, you need to talk through the problem here. If you really care about dogs, this is why I challenge all these trainers. I'm like, really, you actually want me to believe that you care about dogs and you're invested in a process that does the opposite, that sets people up for problems? This is why I challenge these trainers. I'm like, you need to ask the question, but see, they can't, because it's about being popular. Here's the thing, you can be very popular and be totally wrong. This is what's happening. Look at the disconnect. All these dogs being destroyed, millions of dogs being destroyed, people, all these problems happening. the devices being banned, and these balanced dog trainers, they can't talk about it. Think about it. As a dog owner, think about why can't these trainers talk about the problem? Why are they getting so upset because Dale's talking about the real problem? Why? Because there's nothing in it for them. They're already got their 10-year marketing plans done up. They're going right to the wall. It's all about, it's a mess. And so I'm talking through the mess. I'm showing people there's a better way. There's a way to avoid problems at the beginning. There's ways to make sure you're not going to be deceived into thinking that one thing's happening is really not. And this makes sense. It's about what's reasonable. It's not about abusing dogs. I don't abuse dogs. I don't do crazy stuff. It's all makes. Watch my videos. I encourage you, go to my YouTube channel. I put everything right out there in the open. And in fact, okay, the videos I'm putting out right now, I have a board and training I'm doing currently. I have a service dog I'm training. I'm just about to put up a video showing me actually using treats. Believe it or not, Dale's actually using treats at this point with Tiny. But to see, there's a sequence I follow. So understand, when I do things a certain way at the beginning, it's for a reason. It's to make sure dogs are going to release control. Then the fun stuff. But understand, the majority of dogs that I deal with are, it has to focus on the interaction-based side of things. Then, right, then we can get into all this stuff. It doesn't break the spirit. Or see all these trainers getting about suppressing the drive of the dog and breaking the spirit. That's just baloney, right? They're all caught up in that superficial stuff. They don't understand. And then here's the thing, because when the dogs don't hit the level, right, when you don't achieve the result, well, it's the genetics of the dog, and it's the same. You hear the balanced dog trainers talk the same way as the force-free trainers for a reason. All right, they're all caught up in the same superficial process. It's the same framework, and it sets up problems for people. So I encourage you as a dog owner, don't buy into it. Just because something's popular doesn't mean it's true. It's just this culture that's been set up for many, many years. But here's the thing, now you're seeing the problems. Now you're seeing devices being banned. You're seeing breed-specific bans. You're seeing more divisiveness. You're seeing the force-free agenda gaining steam. That's all for a reason. That's because it goes right into what I'm saying. It's going to continue. So you're seeing these balanced dog trainers, they're in a bubble. They can't talk about it. They can't even whisper the problem, and they just want to launch the personal attacks. I get attacked by balanced trainers like crazy on my videos because they're responding no different than the force-free trainers. But again, the question is, why can't they talk about it? You should be, if you're a dog owner and you're going to a balanced trainer, you should be putting it to them. Why can't you talk about this stuff? Is this really, when you're motivating these dogs this way, is that really how the pictures come together? Is there something deeper happening here? Ask them. They don't want to answer it, right? And so when things don't line up, guess what? Your dog's going to get the blame. Just like the force-free trains happens all the time. People say stuff on social media, they get away with it because that's how it works. So again, I don't want to go on a big rant here, but to me, it does get personal because it's a shame what's happening in the dog training community. These trainers won't talk about it. I'm talking about the real problem. I've been consistent in what I've said since the beginning because once I understood, guess what? Solid. But here's the thing, I challenge it. These trainers, these balanced trainers, and this is the funny thing, they're still all over the place. And there's trainers, even in the UK, you'll see them, they're talking, and here's the amazing thing, think about it. They're talking about the role of these devices, whether they should use them, whether they shouldn't use them. They're looking to their audience, their followers, what do you think? Even as these devices are being banned. I mean, think about that. It's incredible. And then they're mad at me for being solid, right? Saying this is the role of these devices. I said this for years, and they're upset with me. But that's how it works. Understand that and here's the thing, it's always the crazy people that want to act like you're crazy, right? I mean, that's just the narcissistic craziness. So again, I put it out there that I'm solid in what I say. I've said the same thing for years. I line this stuff up. I've made predictions about these devices being banned. They've all come true for a reason. I have a rooftop view of what's happening. So again, I'm here to help people understand that. I can go on all day long with this stuff. But if you're a dog owner, you need help, understand where I'm coming from. I'm here to help people. I want you to be successful. I want you to get the right information. Don't buy into this very popular marketing thing. These trainers are all selling it that way. It's just a drive-through mentality. They don't care. If they cared, they wouldn't be promoting this process in the first place. That's the bottom line. If they really cared about dogs the way they say that they do, they wouldn't be promoting a process that sets people up for problems, and they're doing it. And so they don't care about dogs. That's it. There's no way around it. I care about dogs. I tell people the hard truth. I say this is a process. This is what you need to do to make sure you're successful, because ultimately, whether it's service dog training, whether it's you're dealing with a very serious issue with the dog aggression, it matters because you need to get to a certain result. And it can only happen when you understand the real problem. So again, thanks for watching. I hope you got something out of this, this video. If you have questions, send them to me. I'll answer them for free. I'll even maybe talk through it on a Facebook Live video. But again, I'm here to help people. I have lots of great options on my website. Even if you don't live close to me, I have a distance help option available. I've helped a lot of people. I've helped people all over the world through distance help. You can send me videos. I watch them. I give you some positive, constructive information, help you get on the right path. So, because here's the thing, is I come off a certain way on my videos because I'm putting out very hard information. But here's the thing, when people come to me for help, I'm very positive. I'm here to help people. I don't get into this stuff because people are ready for help, and amazing things happen. I was just helping a lady yesterday with her service dog. You know, great results. I mean, people, and it doesn't take long because there's no obstacles. So it's just like, you know, things happen quickly. So again, if you need help, contact me. I'm more than happy to help you. Thanks for watching.